in the event that you know your teenager is having sex, what do? Do you give them birth control? Make sure that they're safe, that they're not going to get pregnant? Leave it at that? It's a good question, definitely, and that's this week's topic. So, the way I feel about it, or what I would do personally, I would not give my teenage girl birth control. I was put on birth control when I was a teenager, and early when I was just beginning my teenage years, actually, and it caused all kinds of weird problems and things for me. Like, it disrupted my menstrual cycle, it changed how my body gained and lost weight, it changed my mood and my ambitiousness, and it's just not natural. And I wouldn't give it to my daughter for that very reason, of that I don't think it's natural. I don't think it's the right thing to do to the body. If your child is having, or your teenager or whatever is having sex, and you know it, and she knows it, you know it, it's happening, the right thing to do is, from my opinion, is to go and approach, your teenager with information. Treat them like a person. They may be at an awkward stage in life and feel like they're 10 million miles away from you, and you might feel like you're pretty separated from them too, but this is still a person, and the best results you're going to get is to treat them accordingly and have discussions. I mean, you don't need to talk about personal details or anything, but sexuality in general, and if you're comfortable with your own sexuality, then you can pass that on to your children. And that's, I think, the best thing that you can do is, discuss preservation. And, I mean, obviously, this isn't right or wrong. I mean, as you guys get to know me more, I don't like to divide things into black and white, right or wrong. It really depends on the situation and the individual circumstances. So if you have a teenager that's like, yeah, I'm having sex, like, I'm doing it, like, whatever, like, no, I don't care, they're just all about it that way, then, it might be the right thing to be like, well, if you're gonna be carelessly having sex, then you should be on birth control so that you don't get pregnant. But if you just have a teenager that's coming into their sexuality because, realistically, whether we as parents like it or not, that happens. I mean, it happens, puberty happens, and it happens. That's when life and Mother Nature says it's time. So it will happen, it does happen, that's when it happens. And yeah, so discussing sexuality and why it's important. Did I say self-preservation? Talking about love and, and not condoning your children, or I don't know if that's the right word, but not looking down on them or trying to make them feel bad about these feelings. I mean, in my opinion, you don't want to come across like sex is bad and you're wrong and you're going to get in trouble if you do it. I mean, I don't think that's a good approach. But, really explain, like, I'm your mother, this is why I feel this way, this is why I'm talking to you about this, I care about you, these are some tips that you can do so that you don't do things you're going to regret later, these are the pros and cons, to, stuff like that. I mean, communication, that's the biggest thing you can do. If you know your kids are having sex, I mean, yeah, really, I don't think it's necessarily wrong, like I said, or I don't know if I said, but I was on birth control when I was, a teenager, and it wasn't wrong. I don't personally think it's a good thing to do to the body, and if you can, but also it was really awesome that I could be on birth control that young. I wanted to be on at that time, and luckily I had a mother that I was open enough with that, she wasn't thrilled that I was having sex, but she knew it was happening, and did the best that she thought she could. Now, I have a daughter and she'll be a teenager, and, you know, I'm really going to try to help her understand basically what she's going through. I mean, it's not just sex, it's like puberty. Puberty is a hard age. It's a hard thing to go through, and it's not just sexual feelings. It's like the whole concept and understanding of what it is to be an adult. I mean, once you start your reproductive years, that's your life until you hit menopause, or until you become too old to reproduce, and it begins to dictate your mind and dictate your behaviors and your decisions and all that good stuff, and it becomes a really necessary part of your health. So, best thing you can do, I guess, is be comfortable with your own sexuality, and be comfortable enough with your own self, and have, a good established relationship so that you can guide them through that hard phase of life, into their coming into, rite of passage. So, yeah, birth control, I don't think it's wrong. I don't think it's the right thing to do. I don't think it's as black and white as that, but it's your job as a parent to know your child and your situation, and to be able to, really decide if that's something. And obviously, if your child comes up to you and is like, "Mom, I want to be on birth control," definitely get their reasons, like why. Obviously, you're having sex, but do you know the pros and the cons to this? Like, do you know what the physical effects? Is that worth it for you? That kind of thing. So, yeah, it's definitely an option, I think, and not the worst option. I mean, pregnancy, teen pregnancy is much more severe of a situation than teen sex, and birth control, if that's happening, is totally alright if that needs to be an option. It's an option if it needs to be used, so that's a little bit of my ramblings about it. And yeah, thanks for listening, guys, and I'll see you guys soon. Blessed be.